Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Rules of Engagement Talking Tactics. This is going to be the second Talking Tactics episode. We're going to have this episode every Monday coming at you, but let's talk a little bit about the schedule for Rules of Engagement. Every Monday through Thursday, this show will air at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's basically a StarCraft 2 analysis show where we go through all these cool pro games on Talking Tactics. We go through a bunch of fundamentals of the games every Tuesday. Wednesday, we go back to pro games, but look at Wednesday, we did stuff a little bit interesting, a little bit unique. Thursday, we look at your games at home on the community critique, and of course, submit all your replays to MajorLeagueGaming.com/replays, and those can be featured on Thursday's community critique show. And of course, all these start at 5 p.m. Eastern. And also, even more importantly, remember to tweet at me any questions you have at ISAxLav. Whatever they're about, we might get to them at the end of every episode segment. It's going to be question and answer period. So tweet at me at ISAxLav. Without further ado, let's talk about what we have on today's show, Talking Tactics. We're going to start off with Leenock vs. Bomber and looking at tactical options in the Zerg vs. Terran game. Then we're going to go on to Flash vs. Crank, talking about the key elements of a macro-focused build and how strong that can be for you if you're in Flash's shoes, or even if maybe you're not in Flash's shoes, the things that work for him best. Then we're going to take a look at how to deal with crisis management into Sunlight versus Sulky, that is a Protoss versus a Zerg, and then of course at the end we're going to do questions on Twitter at ISAxLav. Submit your questions there. So let's actually jump straight into Leenock versus Bomber tactical options. There's a couple things you want to know. First, we're going to talk about how he got to the point of the game he's at. Okay, so Leenock versus Bomber, we're going to jump to 16 minutes into the game. And at the 16-minute mark, he's at a tough spot. If we can look at the food, right, we have Leenock at 136 food versus Bomber at 172. How did it get to that point, right? It got to that point because he took massive damage from a Hellion attack early in the game. Bomber's going mech, Leenock's going, Roach. He's got, unit tab. He's got Roaches, Infestors, and he's heading towards Broodlords. But basically, if you look at the Zerg army compared to Terran army is far superior. And this is a situation you'll find yourself in as well. Sometimes, your opponent pulls off a great harass, you just end up a little bit behind early in the game, and that can be kind of tough. So how do you basically, what tactical options do you have? Okay, there's a couple varieties. The first thing to think about is what are your attacking options, right? His attacking options are non-existent right now because of the army difference, right? If in fact we go to the army tab, the value there is significantly higher for the Terran. So no attacking options for the Zerg player. That's a pretty scary army to deal with just Infestors and a few Roaches. We look at harassing options. Well, he's got these Infestors over here, right? That's a great harassing option. Then we talk about defending harass options. He doesn't need to worry too much about defending harass at this point. Hellions have already done their damage. Mech doesn't have too many harass beyond the Hellion attacks open to it. And he's got the Queens there, and he's got such good, if you look at his map vision, he could see any Hellions coming around the angle. So he has harass pretty much covered. Now we got to talk about how he can defend and attack, right? So if Bomber's going to move out and attack, how can he defend that? Well, he can't. All right, this is something that's an interesting point. We're actually going to take a jump to a Sun Tzu quote that's pretty cool about what to do when you're facing against such an inferior, or when you have such an inferior force like that. So it's the Sun Tzu quote is, "It is the rule of war. If our forces are 10 to the enemy's 1 to surround them, 5 to 1 to attack them, twice as numerous to divide our army into 2. If equally matched, we can offer battle. If slightly inferior numbers, we can avoid the enemy." And right here where Leenock is at, he's at, if quite unequal in every way, right? He's down by 40 food. His opponent has a massive tech. His opponent has more workers plus mules, right? He's unequal in every way. You can only flee from them. That's all he can do. And then, hence you can make an obstinate fight made by a small force, and the end it must be captured by a larger force, which means he cannot defend an attack. But what he can do is he can be obstinate with a small force. So we're going to see here, he's already prepared the same idea, right? His army, this is most of his army right here. That's basically his entire force. So he's already fleed from the Terran behind in the top left. And then what he's going to do is when he notices Terran's moving out, he's going to wait till Terran leaves his base because he can't fight them. And his army that's fleed is then going to be annoying. It's going to be really, really annoying. And on the other side, he's going to retreat. He's got the rest of his army Roaches, and he's got a handful of Infestors here. And that's going to be, let's pause it again here. So he's going to do some harass here. He's in the middle of lobbing out all these infested Terrans. He knows Bomber's force is moving down. In fact, it's right here. He's going to try to be obstinate with this army right here, right? What that means is he just wants to play a delay in action, right? What these infestors mean, in fact, I think he might have a few more. Oh, no, he just has a few. But what they mean is that Bomber can't just kind of roll his army mindlessly through Leenox base, right? He's got to, you know, be careful and make sure that he's not too vulnerable to massive fungal growths, especially chaining those together could be absolutely devastating from Leenox's perspective. So he's going to be obstinate with this force while he counterattacks with this one. And using his technique, right, he's going to basically do a lot of economic damage to Bomber, right? I don't think he'll get either of these command centers, but he gets 7 supply depots are right here, or excuse me, 6, sorry. Math is tough sometimes. And then, of course, he forced Bomber to abandon base. On the other hand, these bases of his, he knows he can't fight, so he just runs away, right? This army here, look at this, all the drones running away, the army running away. But he wants to keep the army alive so it can slow down this vastly inferior force. And if he can slow it down, eventually he's going to get these Broodlords out, right? This is something where if he tried to defend this, even if he had his full Infestor army, if he loses this army, right, all of a sudden Bomber just unsieges and just leaves like 2 tanks here and the rest go through and they kill the natural. And then all of a sudden he loses 3 bases instead of right now he's only losing 2, okay? So that's basically the whole idea, is you make sure they can't kill you too fast and eventually get those Broodlords out. The other thing to notice, we're going to pause right here, is that as he was doing that, he expanded cross-map, right? He knew he was going to lose 2 bases, right? 1 base, 2 base. And at best, he could be annoying to Bomber, but he couldn't actually counterattack him at all. I mean, Bomber has a decent rally point there. You know, he's going to have Siege Tanks. Even if he threw infested Terrans down, Siege Tanks would rally up and control the high ground. So he has plenty of options there as far as being really annoying. So instead, he just tries to harass the economy a little bit, and then he knows he needs to get his own economy back into shape, so he takes these 2 extra bases on the side. And that's the whole idea of it. And then because of this, all of a sudden, where he should have lost the game, all of a sudden he's right back in it because now he has Broodlords. He kept his Infestor count, doing a little bit more harass, being a little bit annoying in the back of this. I guess you'd call it. It was Bomber's 4th. Now it's more like his 3rd. Although he's probably, yeah, he's retaking his space, so it still is his 4th. And so while he's doing that, it's basically at the end of the day, over the last 2 minutes, what's happened is Bomber's killed 2 of his bases, and he hasn't killed a single one of Bomber's bases. He's done a little bit of annoying harass with that infested Terrans, but at the end of the day, he's lost 2 bases for nothing, which is bad, right? I mean, but he was inferior in every way, and he hasn't lost a game yet, and that's from those techniques right there. So that's, I think that's really the key part to take away is if you can't win a battle, just always avoid your opponent and try to just be as annoying to them to slow down your death as long as possible. You know, while you try to figure out a way to get back in the game, like these expansions on the side is a much better choice than just trying to throw everything away in a last vain attempt to defend. Now we're going to fast forward a little bit to a point and get to one more section. That's kind of cool. We're going to switch on to Leenox view. So he goes to this defense, some harass there. Nice little move by Bomber, trading away tanks for an expansion. Because, of course, his tank count is not that important versus this type of massive Broodlord army. And now Leenox, you know, he kind of has to defend all his bases, but he's been able to rebuild a giant army, right? So now he's at a segment right now where all of a sudden, his army compared to this, it's not, if we jump back in that same Sun Tzu quote, right? We can see that it's not vastly inferior in every way anymore, right? In fact, that the section of this quote that I think matches these type of army differences is if 5-to-1, attack him. Okay, I think that's really, I mean, of course, there's that 5 times the food, but this segment of units right here is about 5 times as weak as this segment here because there's so much energy in all the units, and Broodlords are so effective against pure mech units. So that's the same idea by him. And there's, actually, if we can bring up that quote one more time, I think there's one interesting thing I want to point out in that quote is that it says, if 5-to-1 to attack him, and then if you look at twice as numerous to divide our army into 2, if equally matched, we can offer battle. And so some people think to attack him means the same as offer battle, and in military strategy it doesn't. So to attack him means to go after your opponent and actually look for an engagement. To offer battle means if you're at a very good vantage point, then you can let them come to you and you can handle them, but only with like a defender's advantage at a, you know, it's you're saying, okay, I'm not going to run away from you. I'm going to stand my ground at a place of my choosing. And so Bomber's kind of chosen this. I think it was just a clear mistake on his part because he's not equally matched to Leenock, and this isn't even a great place to pick his stand at. And so this is where Leenock's looking for the battle, and Bomber is probably right around now starting to realize that his army is going to get stuck here. He's in Festers, but he doesn't know the full strength of Leenock's army until right now. And all of a sudden he's realizing, I offered battle, but my army wasn't equal. These transfuses on this one Broodlord, he's never even going to die. Look at this guy. 3 transfuses, a 4th transfuse there, and basically Leenock didn't lose a single unit there, and he squashed Bomber's army just because he went for the attack when he was strong, which is a key time. If you can isolate their army and go for it and you're several times stronger, that's when you want to do it. And then from here on out, the game actually goes on for a while because even though Bomber lost this chunk of his army, if you look at the income tab, Bomber's still, well, right now he's down, but I mean, he's still got a ton of bases and plenty of mules, so he's still in actually a really great position here. It's not, he's not out of the game yet, but the game goes on. But the main point of this was to really look at the tactical techniques Leenock used to deal with being really far behind in the game as far as to how to get back in the game. So if you want to do a quick recap on the important things to think about for a game like this, it is going to be knowing your tactical options. Can you attack your opponent? Can you defend your opponent's attacks? Can you harass your opponent? Can you defend your opponent's harass attempts? Right? You have to know what options you have with the units you have. Then you have to identify your position, right? So that's saying, is he way stronger than me militarily, economically? Given that I'm in this position, which of my options are going to be the ones that are the best to do? And that, what I just said was the evaluating options part. So know your various options, know the position you're in, and then you can evaluate the options. Leenock knew he had to flee, counterattack, and then eventually build up an army that where he can engage his opponent. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be right back with our next segment, which is going to be a macro build.